and welcome to 85th Leadership Levers on a very interesting topic. As you must have seen, this is designing data-driven teams. I'm sure in your respective teams and companies and organizations and firms, I'm sure a lot of things must be happening around building data-driven teams. Because I think aptly captured as how do you develop this data-driven culture in the companies, and quite often it is said as digital transformation also at a very broad level. But to do a very interesting session for on this topic, we have Minoo Gupta, who is joining us from California. And Minoo, extremely sorry to disturb you early in the morning. It is about 5:37 also in the morning, and sorry to disturb you once again. And before I hand over the platform to her, let me have the pleasure of introducing her formally. And right now, she's a L&D consultant at University of San Diego. And before that, she had a very illustrious career, and some of which I will have the pleasure of reading out to you. She's a seasoned engineering executive with over 20 years of experience in leading global teams to deliver innovative and differentiated enterprise software products and engineering processes. Her mission is to drive customer success and satisfaction through delivery and process excellence, leveraging agile methodologies, data analysis, and problem-solving skills. As a senior director of engineering at Citrix, which is just before current assignment, she was responsible for the strategy and direction of technical learning, cross-selling, upskilling, and new hire induction training programs for all Citrix engineering teams, improving cloud and digital transformation and employee engagement. She spearheaded the diversity of best-in-class information experience and technical content for all Citrix products, reducing support, overhead, and increasing efficacy for customer deployments. She is very passionate about building teams, mentoring, and coaching managers to encourage progressive professional development, improving retention, and delivering high quality in output. And she has a very positive and very enthusiastic collaborative style with peers, senior leaders, engineering, HR, and customer success teams on formulating and implementing strategy, vision, and execution plans. She also has been recognized with the very prestigious 2018 YWCA Silicon Valley Tribute to Women Award for her contribution to the Silicon Valley in executive and professional roles. Like I said before, and her current role, she was with the Citrix for 15 years and 4 months, and the last assignment being the senior director learning and content. And before that, she was with Oracle for 2 years and 5 months, where she was the director of development. And before that, she was with Oblix Inc. Again in Cupertino, California, as the director of engineering. And like I said, she's going to talk to us on this very interesting topic on designing data-driven teams, processes, people, and platforms. Thank you so much, Minoo. And once again, sorry to have you disturb you early in the morning, but absolute pleasure having you. Over to you, Minoo.
Thank you so much, Nagendra and team. It's really my pleasure to be with all of you this evening and this morning. That may be just me. Welcome everyone. Nagendra, that was really heartfelt introduction. So I really appreciate, and I really appreciate TimesPro team to giving me this opportunity. So we will jump in and get started. So let me share my screen, unless it's already shared. Okay, Nagendra, can we see?
Yeah. Okay, I think maybe, so maybe the view mode, slideshow mode. I think.
Yeah, slideshow mode, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, good.
So I think, as Nagendra has already introduced the topic, we're going to talk about data-driven teams. And my focus today is going to be giving you some examples from my career as to what I have done in my career for various different teams. And in order to make it a little bit interactive, what I'll do is I will give you a couple of questions and kind of just see where are you individually or your teams or organizations, as the case may be, to see. So, we will skip over the introduction, since Nagendra has done a fantastic job of introducing me. So I would, and please feel free to please put this in the chat, so I can also see, and maybe I am, I'll be able to see. Maybe I'll not be able to see, but I'm hoping that I can at least see the chat so I can see the answers. So that will really help me. So where is your company or team today, and do you feel they are data driven? So, yes or no question, or if you think they are, that would be helpful for me. And maybe I'm not able to see the live chat. So maybe it's in Q&A. Okay, let me see. Partially. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Akanksha and Sandeep, for your answers. So I think so maybe the answer is kind of mixed, right? I think that may be the best answer we can take from here. So I'm going to minimize this so I can see. And again, just going through a couple of these questions so I can get a better sense for where everybody is on the chat is, are they using data to make any decisions? Do you see any teams or any your own organization digging into data to make any decisions? I mean, I think I'll just, you have the questions in front of you. So just kind of go over it and see if any of the questions kind of jive to you. The question that I am most interested in learning is, what is it that your organization is doing to give you the tools to learn about data? And are there any trainings in place? Are they actively encouraging people to learn? What does the ecosystem look like for you? And it's okay if we don't have many answers right now. We will continue to move forward and just discuss why some of these things are important and how can we actually gain access to some of this knowledge. So why is data so important? As you know, in today's economy, we are collecting data at a mammoth speed. Around the world, everybody is on multiple devices. We are taking photos, we are taking pictures, we are interacting with people. Just the mobile usage alone generates tons of data. And if we are using the mobile phone to do transactions, like in India, I mean, all of, India is using UPI for many transactions, financial transactions. All of that generates data. And the data can be used to gain insights. You can use that to drive ROI for projects. And you can also assess, like, what is it that data that's being used for? So there are a lot of economic benefits for a team, for a company, to pay attention to the active usage of data. Most companies who are in SaaS business today have two very important metrics that they measure. One is monthly usage of active customers, called MAU. Many times you would have heard that. And then daily usage, daily active usage. And the active is important because many times what happens is customers will buy the product, but they will not use it. So then, you don't really get any insights from that. So that's really why it's important to have these metrics ready. So what does it actually, involve if you want your organization to become data-driven? So now I remember from my own teams at Citrix, one of the things that I was chartered with was one of my teams in my last few years of Citrix was driving internal technical training education for all of engineering. And when I started, looking at the team, looking at the kind of data we were collecting, the data we were measuring us against, one of the things that I noticed that we were measuring number of hours learned. And that's a very typical measure. And it's actually a good measure to know how much time is being spent on any team on learning. But what we didn't know, what is it that people were learning about? So now, as you can imagine, that's a very different metrics. But in order to understand that what what is it that people are spending time on? It was important for us to measure that as well. When people are spending 40 hours, 50 hours learning related to your job, right? That's the point, Akanksha. So for example, people said, they're spending 30, 40 hours a year learning. We had no visibility as a team as to what is it that they're learning. They could be learning photography, all we know, but that's not relevant to business. So that's why having a vision, understanding what is it that the team is doing and why we are doing that, that's important. So that becomes the goal. So as we came together, we decided that as a team, it will be our charter to not just measure the number of hours, but we also measure the skills learned. So that became a goal. And the only way to drive that goal is if we can look at the data much more succinctly. So we had to come up with a strategy of figuring out how to go about doing that. We had to look at our data. We had to analyze the data. And in some cases, we had to pivot the data because we didn't have the right measuring tools to actually even understand what that was. So infrastructure, again, becomes important. And in this particular case, infrastructure is the tools that we have in order to drive those decisions, right? In some cases, for learning systems, LMS becomes very important. That's a platform. In order to look at the data, it might become important to have some visual tools. And if you don't have visual tools, or if you have several platforms that you are using for learning, then all of the data from all of those might have to be collated. So one has to look at the entire organization and kind of see what are the different elements that we need to build an organization or a team which relates to and has focus for driving data. And this is a very, very famous quote. If you can't manage it, you can't measure it. Or if you don't have visibility to the data, you won't be able to improve it. So Peter Drucker has said that a while ago, and it's true day in and day out. It's more true today than it has ever been. You have to have the information in order to change or measure or improve it. So that's really what the crux of data-driven teams becomes. Now, as you walk into a team or organization, some people will be already aware of what data can do for them. And some people may just be learning about it. And some people may be naysayers. That's very, very common in almost every team. And some people may just really believe that, they know everything, so they don't need to learn. And so you have to work with individuals. You have to change their mindset. So that is really the culture. And culture gets driven sometimes top down, sometimes bottom up, but it takes time. And sometimes we have to put in specific learning for tools that to drive the team to get better. Again, I'll give the LMS team example. In the LMS team, they knew a lot about creating and being instructional designers, right? When I took over the team, they didn't have the skills to measure or change the data that they were getting. So they had to actually learn to look at the data. So in order to go from hours measured to skills learned, one of the tasks that the team had to actually do is look at the kind of data we are collecting. So it turned out that the data we are collecting didn't have one key information to figure out what skills people are learning. And I'm going to give you this question just to make it interactive. What do you think we will need in our database in order to figure out what is the skill that people have learned for the 1 hour that they spent? Any guesses? Any wild guesses is fine too. I am, it would be good to see. It's just a specific thing that we have to look for when we are talking about skill. So for example, somebody took a course, you're taking a data-driven webinar today. So if this webinar was tagged saying this is about data awareness or data, measurement, you will know if in the database that Akanksha and Sandeep took a course or took a class or took a webinar on data-driven culture or data-driven processes. So just having that information, just having that tag saying this course relates to data helps to know that the skill that somebody is building is regarding data. So that those become very critical to identify. Not only that, now that we had figured out, that we were going to pivot, we needed to work with all sorts of engineering leaders, because we have to present this data back to engineering leaders. Engineering leaders were used to, HR leaders were used to seeing the data saying, oh, the organization is spending 30, 40 hours per year learning. And the people were very happy that, we are creating the time for them to learn. But managers in some cases were asking us saying, but what is it that my team is learning? So now that we had new data, there was a more trust built into our capabilities of delivering the content, delivering the solutions for that can be catered to a particular team. So building trust, working with stakeholders becomes very important. And for different teams and different processes and different organizations, this would be different. So, pay attention to what that can be for you. Again, here it's a very generic, obviously, in a data team, and this varies based on organization to organization and team to team. So, for example, I will give a different example that one of the teams I had was content management team or technical content writers. So, many of us have used instructions for using a product, and that was the team I had, and that this team was responsible. It was a pretty sizable team, 40, 50 people, and they were all writing content for Citrix products, all the Citrix products. So now one of our tasks was to figure out what content is used on the most. When the product is released, what is the content that is used most? So I'm going to ask the group, what do you think is a content that's used most when you release a product? Any guesses? You wrote 30, 40 pages. In some cases, for our products, the pages were in thousands, actually. And I mean, we can look at by human eye to figure out what is being read most. But any guesses, what is it that is read most when a product is released? And I'll tell you, the insight we got, the most read piece of information is a README. It's the first README that says, what are the changes that the product has today? Because customers, partners need to know that what is it that they're getting. So just having that information alone now focuses our attention on making sure that the README is absolutely clear, because that's the first interaction any customer is going to have with the product. And the product teams have done a lot of work in releasing the product. But if the README is not up to the mark, if it doesn't have the right information, the first impression of the customer or the user is going to be, oh, this team doesn't know what they're doing. And that's a shame, because you've spent a lot of time, hundreds of hours of engineering has gone into it, and a lot of work has gone into pulling the content together as to what changes. But if you're not delivering it correctly, now you have just made a impact issue, because you didn't know that that was the most important piece of information to start with. So roles in this particular case becomes the creators themselves, the data collectors and the data analyzers. So in this case, all we had to do is pay attention to our Google Analytics. I mean, it's simple as that can be. It's impactful. So for every team, I mean, the example I wanted to give you is very different. Now, in this collaboration culture comes from, when we take this data, give it to our customers or partners, or give it to support team to say, hey, look, these are the hotspots. Our support team comes to us looking with the data saying, look, licensing, we have a lot of licensing issues for a particular product. So we can work with them and change that, so that in organizations, information can be used or data can be used to collaborate and build trust. That's really what happens. But we have to identify who these people are going to be, who are our stakeholders, and show them the results of what we have collected and share it with them and analyze with them together. So that builds transparency. I think we talked about continuous learning, and it's continuous learning in this particular age of data is, I mean, now we are in AI, we can go on and on talking about AI. And, at University of San Diego, I'm actually working on building a data science courses with other faculty member. And it's enormous. I mean, the machine learning is the analysis, and the data tools that we have available are changing every day. So it becomes important for the teams to like understand and deploy some of these capabilities using machine learning Python code, so we can get much better than just looking at Google Analytics charts. We can actually look at trends by putting some unsupervised learning where we can cluster the data. So there's just a lot of depth in this field, and we just have to keep up with the learning. Many of you are probably hearing about AI. How many of you have heard about ethical issues with the data that is being collected in AI? Just show of hands. Yeah, I mean, thank you, Akanksha, and thank you others who are raising hands. So why is it there? Because the reason the ethical issues are there because we feel vulnerable, we feel used in some cases. In some cases, our information feels like it's being overutilized. So those become ethical issues. So we have to be able to trust that people taking the data or where we are putting the data will be valued and it will not be misused. Same for organizations in content collection. If we are collecting the data as to customers' journey, what are they doing on a website? They want to make sure that their data will be protected and not misused. So it becomes a prime importance for us to understand what is the sensitivity. So customers are very sensitive if you use their name for any marketing purposes without their consent, right? I mean, so that becomes an ethical issue for an organization. So we have to be fair in that data collection and usage of it. I think once we collect the data, we analyze it, it beholds us to think about how are we going to change and iterate our processes. So that's where the processes come in picture. So for example, now that we know that the README is the most used data, a piece of data that the content team is generating, they have to look at the information that we put into that. We have to change it. And if it doesn't work, or if the customers are still giving feedback that the information is not enough, we got to iterate our process of creating the README. It's not about iterating on the data, it's about iterating on the process. So everybody gets involved in this process when we can all zone into any one particular area of wanting a change. In platforms in this particular case, I mean, I'm just giving you examples because you will realize how interrelated some of these things are. So for content team, so we have a platform where we are publish the content. Most teams have docs.citrix.com or docs.xyzcompany.com. That's a publishing site. But in order to publish the content, you probably have a whole different process of creating the content, verifying the content, making sure it doesn't have any errors, grammatical errors, spelling checks, or whatnot, and then publishing it. This whole thing is a pipeline. This whole thing is a platform, and it's an online platform, probably is a SaaS platform, but it has lots of different tools. So the platform is not any one thing. Splunk, in some cases, people use for visualization. That's just one tool in this data journey, and that's a visualization tool. And that, maybe even data correction tool. And maybe, as Splunk is getting better and better, maybe they have some machine learning tools built into it. But even then, it's like one piece of this entire platform that comes into play in any team that is focused on building their acumen to use data and driving and measuring results using that. So I'm going to stop there. I know it's 25 minutes of lecture. I want to make it interactive for you. I'm happy to answer any questions. We can go back into the slides and revisit any of these, but I want to make this, this hour useful for you and answer some of the questions, and then we can have a dialogue based on that. So I would encourage you to, have questions, and if not, I can, share a few more examples of my data journey.
Right now, I think maybe we should go ahead have some more examples. I think maybe another few minutes, and then we can have this question answer session. Is it okay, Minoo?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I will stay on this data team, and I will give you a couple more examples of how the data has been useful, and how we have built some of these tooling around using the data. So one project that I worked on was I was managing a design team, and a design team often has various different players. Some people are looking at workflows and designing new workflows. Some people are doing studies with users and learning their behavior, and some, there are people who are prototyping a new workflow. So there are just different people in a design team. And the design team's focus always is new products, because that's usually the most exciting piece of any work. But this design team was focused on doing new work, but one of their tasks was to improve workflows which were already existing. And you might ask, like, why is that important, right? So the reason is, in complex products. So one of our products at Citrix was a NetScaler load balancer. It's a very, very famous product. 70% of internet goes through a NetScaler somewhere in the world today. And so, and it's a hardware device, it's a software device, and it has a lot of complex workflows to set up the rules for load balancing. So the site, yes, please, if you raised your hand, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, Kunwar and Ramya, either you can ask, or maybe you can put in the chat box. Either way, it's fine.
I have a couple of questions here. Also, like, there's a question from Akanksha saying, what kind of data can we think of collecting data while team building? Okay, that's a good question, Akanksha. So I think there were a couple of other people. Would you like to put your question, or would you like to ask directly?
Ramya, if you want, you can ask question. Same Kunwar also. Yes, Mrs. Kunwar Satyendra Singh. Both of you, if you would like to ask questions, you can unmute and ask. Yeah, Ramya, go ahead.
Yes.
Hi, ma'am. Yeah. So I have a question, like, especially as I'm working as a global HR manager,
Yeah.
handling Asia Pacific team and European team, and I do handle a data scientist team.
Okay.
So in the process, where the automation is coming, AI is coming, artificial intelligence is coming, and most of the things are going for an automation. I would like to know the scope of HR. How do we upgrade, and how do we handle this kind of challenges in the team? And
Yeah.
how do we develop the team? So I just want to know about that.
Okay, no, very good question. Very good question. HR is caught in a very sweet spot, because what is happening for HR, and I saw this from my learning management team experiences, also, interacting with many other folks around the globe. Employee experience is become a HR role, right? So employee experience, how do you even think about employee experience? Employee experience cannot be measured just by the sensitivity of employees, right? That is what the HR role was traditionally. HR role was hiring, onboarding, benefits, and managing any issues, and then largely leadership development, right? I mean, I'm generalizing it, so Kamya, I'm sorry to generalize it at that level, but I wanted to, acknowledge some of the things that I have seen in my career. But today, HR is being tasked to make sure that that employees' hybrid work is working well. They are being tasked to figure out that the productivity is good in some cases. They are being tasked to have learning systems being monitored and measured. And in some cases, HR teams being asked to make sure that, there's continuous learning processes in place. So there are a lot of different variations here, right? So if you already have data scientists on team and you've taken the time to bring them on, I think what is important is data scientists understand how to employ maybe the machine learning tools, right? I mean, that is what data scientist is correct. But what they don't have, I'm assuming, so bear with me, what they may not have is probably the right word is the context. They may not have HR context. They may not understand what is important. So now it goes back to the first slide where when we are building a team, what is it that's important, right? So I'm going to stop here. So what is the goal, right? And various goals will have various different elements. Like I mentioned, when we were pivoting from skills to be measured from just number of hours, and this was a HR function, by the way. HR was responsible for letting the entire organization know how many hours were spent on learning, because that was one of their tasks. But now when I took over, I was like, but this is not enough. I mean, as an engineering manager, I want to know what is it that my team is spending time on. So that becomes a goal. So that can only be driven by visibility of data. So now a data scientist, and we had several data scientists working with us too, because they came from other teams. And once the goal was given to them, then they can figure out like, oh, okay, this is how I can go about thinking about it. So having data scientists is absolutely marvelous. But understanding what is it that you want to drive, data scientists will not be able to do that. So either the business leaders can help, or engineering leaders who are generalists can help in this process, or the HR team itself has to say what is it that's needed by survey and other things to get that data. Does that make any sense? I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Ramya. Yeah.
Ramya. So does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah.
So I think
my another question to it, ma'am. In this journey, we are more dependent on the data scientists. As I told you, I also have a data scientist team and AI team and all that. So do you think the HR of this generation should also learn AI tools, or should learn a lot of automation things, so that they are not dependent on the data scientist team? Or do you think, I think it's okay to depend on them?
No, you absolutely have to depend on them, Ramya. There's HR, look, HR and traditionally, okay, so twofold answer, actually, I'll give you. I hope that'll be meaningful for you. So today's data scientists, right, are specialists. Okay. In another 4 years, 5 years, maybe there'll be undergraduates who will take data science courses, and you will have HR people with some data science knowledge. But today, that is not the case. If you've been in the industry for 10 or 12 years, there's likely that you will have to rely on data scientists who are specialists. That's who they are. As a HR team, as a HR head, it becomes very useful to understand the depth of knowledge the data scientists need, and what is relevant in that data scope. For example, the HR team, if they are aware of the fact, looks like you are aware of the fact that there are some AI tools, there are some machine learning tools, which can help in driving the data insights. But how do you decide which insights or which algorithms to use for driving that insights? That becomes a very specific data science activity. But you can have the goal. You can look at the charts. As an HR person, visualization tools and what is it that being visualized has to be looked at, right? So bar charts were the only things we all knew and learned how to visualize, and we can kind of, figure it out. Okay, something's going up, something's going down. We can we can get the trend. But today's visualization tools are very different. You can be looking at a clustered data, and then you have to figure out okay, why is this cluster here? Why is that cluster not here? How do I move this cluster of employees who are working from home over to maybe coming to work one day a week? What do I need to do? Why do the people come to work one day a week? What is it that, what is it that drives them to come here? So it becomes like behavior needs to be overlaid on data. And that requires both kind of skills, right? You need some HR skills to ask the right questions, and you need to have data scientists kind of help you share that information. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you. That's okay.
So thank you for asking that question. So wonderful. I think we were able to, get into a little more depth. So Kanwar has a question. If I may take that before the next person. I am from maritime industry, which sees numerous accidents and injuries in a day-to-day operations. How can data analytics be used to enhance safety, and what specific findings from data analysis can guide safety improvement? So, really good question. Kanwar, I'm assuming that it's some kind of factory operation, and you want to, it would be helpful to understand what is it that that can be done to drive safety of employees and maybe even the products that are being built, they are better quality. So just the fact that you're asking this question is a good start, right? You have asked several questions. How can data be used? You want to improve the efficiency as well as reduce the injuries, drive safety. And you want to figure out what are the improvements that can be made to change this. There are several questions in your question actually. So now you are thinking about what is the goal that you want to drive. You got several goals here. Pick one, right? So the one goal could be, you just said you see numerous accidents and injury in day-to-day operations. Do you have a visibility on what are these operations that fail? What are these injuries that happen every day? Do you have that data? If you don't have that data, data collection will be important as the first step. Unless you have data, weeks worth of data, months worth of data, you don't have any trend to go by. So to have trends, to see the why behind certain actions, we need some level of data. Some information needs to be there. Maybe you collect a week's worth of data and see, what? After lunch, every day on certain machines, we lose tools. I'm making up stuff. You know these things much better from being wherever you are. Okay, maybe after lunch, people need a 5 minutes of break because they are, they're kind of tired and they end up dropping tools and something breaks. I'm simplifying your example to just articulate how to think about it more than anything else. So what did we do? We measured, we looked at the data, we found a trend, and then we saw a pattern. Now you can look at the pattern and say, what can be done about that pattern? Is this pattern relevant? So this is a multi-step process, as you can see. And once you figure out the pattern, Now you can come back and say, I can improve it. So the improvement becomes a process change. What are you going to do to change the process? So that makes sense? Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Kanwar. So Akansha, you have a question, you have some observations. So I'm going to see if I can summarize what you asked last. I think self-learning is great and continuous, but getting help from team is good for collaboration and better decision. Yeah, absolutely. The subject matter experts, often also referred as SMEs, are very critical in any learning. You know, why do we go to subject matter experts? Because they have experience, they have tried things, you can avoid pitfalls. So when you're, interacting with course material, at least the, the team we were building at Citrix, that was one of the things we decided, that for every course, we will list out a few subject matter experts. So you can do self-paced learning, but if you get stuck, you can dial or you can reach out to a person on the team on Slack and say, hey, I see that you're a subject matter expert. Can I get 5 minutes of your time? So, it helps a lot. So thank you for suggesting that and highlighting that. Shakti here has another question. He says, I am in a BPO service. Please share how I can use data more efficiently. Shakti, I'm surprised that your BPO service is not using data already, or you don't maybe have seen how they're using data. So any service organization, right, has a set of people and set of services that are being provided. For for example's sake, let me just say that this service is a delivery service. Now, if this is a delivery service, you have delivery people, they are delivering some goods to some customers. So, and deliveries have schedules, delivery has times, delivery has delays, delivery could have a lot of issues, right? Maybe the driver issues happen, maybe some other things. So again, the same thing. So what goal you're putting is, I would like the service to be more efficient, right? Correct? I mean, just think about it. That is your goal. Now, what are the elements of the service? I just laid out the people in the service. What are some processes that you have in service? What are some processes that do you measure those processes and the time on the processes? Let's say efficiency in this particular case is time of delivery. Okay, I mean, that's just one example. There could be many other examples. So if time of delivery is something that we want to measure, first the question to ask is, do I know what is the time of delivery today? And again, we go back to the Converse example where we have to measure what we want to change. Remember Peter Drucker, it just said, what we want to change needs to be measured. It's as simple as that. So if it is time that we want to improve, we have to first know what is it that's happening. In that time duration, do we have visibility of how long, let's say we were delivering a pizza in this particular case, how long is the pizza delivery slow because the provider doesn't make it on time? Is it slow because the driver cannot get there on time to pick it up? Is it slow because it was too far and there was traffic? Or is the customer, was hard to find the customer once the delivery person got to the building? So all of these elements can cause issues in time, but we need to know where to improve our end-to-end service. So looking at the entire process, and this is why I talked about the process. The process is not one thing. You can't just go to one person and say, you know what, work harder. That's not good enough. In today's world, that's not good enough. And we have to design our processes. We have to break them down in measurable chunks. And when we can break down them in measurable chunks, we can see where the delays are. I'll give you an example. So when we have new hires, right, coming on board, one of the things that every engineering manager wants, and this, Ramya, this may be relevant to some things you do. Every engineering manager or every team wants that new hire to be up and running at speed of light. 2 weeks. They want them to start coding, and they want them to start checking in. And here, the poor new hire who just started today is going, well, I came to this maritime ship. I don't even know where the bathroom is. I need to figure out the bathroom. I need to get comfortable. I need to figure out what is my role. I have so many things on my mind, right? But the engineering managers, they just want people productive because that's what they were hired for. So what do we have to do in these 2 weeks to get this person productive? We have to do everything. We have to get them comfortable. We have to get them their benefits signed. We have to tell them about the ship and where the ship is headed, the goal of the ship, the company, and the team that they're going to be working on, the new tools that they may be using, and the infrastructure that they are going to be interacting with. So there's a lot to cover here. So, and if they don't know how to navigate this journey on a self-discovery path, or because there's not anybody, if you're working from home, you're going to be by yourself. So you have to learn many of these things on your on your own time, possibly. And Akansha is saying, like, pre-joining training can be useful, but sometimes people don't have time to do more training before joining. So we created a self-learning paths for different teams, different roles, to say, okay, these are must-haves, these are nice-to-haves, and this is based on your team and your specific role that you might be doing. And these are the tools that you're going to be interacting with. If you're an engineer, you're going to have a set of rules. If you're a salesperson, these are a set of tools for you. And we saw that having a package for new hires, which was vetted by engineers, by HR team, and delivering them on time, that self-paced, the comfort level increased. So by the time they went to the team, they had a lot of the basic information of the organization and the team to get started. It still took them another week or two before they started coding, but it wasn't, the employee experience became better. So Ramya, this is another data point for employee experience. We started measuring, like, how many people are taking the class? Are they getting the email to take the class on time? Or is the content accessible? The content that they're getting, is that usable? Are they engaging with the content? So every piece of this can be measured and have some information that can be used to fine-tune these processes. So thank you for asking that question, Shakti. I know, long answer, but I'm hoping you got a sense of direction you can take in driving that. So I think we have maybe 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes.
Minoo, I think, can I have 1 or 2 questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Based on some of the participants. I think one of the things that we have noticed very strangely, correct me if I'm wrong, Minoo, I think is that, around 2002, 2003 is when we have started seeing something called as a data analyst, right? Right. And then around 2017, 18 is when we have seen first time, I think 2017 is when The Economist first time in the world has published data being the new oil. I mean, in May 2017 issue, I remember the cover page. And that's the first time in the world somebody's used data being the new oil and all that stuff. So around 2018 is again, we have seen a data scientist. And around, I think 2-3 years back, again, we started seeing data engineers. And then now what we are seeing is ML engineers. So therefore, there's a, there's a, I think, continuous
it's progressive journey.
Yeah, exactly. So, but very strangely, the analysts were born before the data scientists. That's what we get to see. So therefore, in your point of view, right, I think since you have worked with the global teams, how is it like, when, you're structuring the team, because you're talking about, having a data-driven team, how do you ensure that this analysts also are part of a scientist, or let's say the engineer is part of it? So therefore, the data that you're, because if the input is not, have that quality, then you're putting so many things on the table itself, right? You're leaving so much on the table. So therefore, how do you plan this out? So therefore, the people who are going to analyze, the analyst part of it, are also working working equally well with the data scientists who actually can prepare the architecture for data collection and eventually for data visualization, mapping, and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, no, very good question, Nagendra. Thank you for asking. And this goes back to the slide that I talked about, where we talked about building the team, right?
Yeah.
Look at number two. Number two is collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Collaboration, you just talked about the support team, for example, right? They have, I mean, just in the context of companies, I will just talk about, they are probably the first person in the customer journey who is collecting the data, correct? Because customers go to support site saying, I have a problem. Or employee comes to Ramya saying, you know what, I don't know where to find benefits information. So those are the first touch points. Now, if we don't know what we're collecting, we're never going to be able to figure out what we're analyzing. So you're correct. The data analysts were people who were getting, who were using the data, whatever data is available, to use the visualization tools and kind of use them, like Splunk, I mean, Tableau, all of these tools came in, and data analysts became the people who could visualize the information, whatever information was there, and they could tell you, okay, these are trends and this is what is happening. What has happened is data has become so large that these analysts cannot do justice to visualization tools anymore.
Yeah.
So hence, we are gone to data engineering, because the data, like this oil, is exploding every day. And so the data scientists came in. And now the data scientists were using simple tools like machine learning and this and that. And now we have AI, which is like the explosion of next generation, where the tools are just getting auto-created on the fly. I mean, I'm actually, creating a course on machine learning at University of San Diego, and I'm creating the machine learning course, and I'm learning on the fly. I was like, what are all these algorithms? How am I going to use all these algorithms? I as an experienced person has to rely on data engineer of tomorrow and today, because there is no way I can keep up with the algorithms, and the math and the statistics involved in it is very, very dense. I mean, it's so having the math knowledge that the data scientists have, the statistical knowledge they have, is absolutely critical. So I think it has to be a collaborative culture, and we have to respect and honor the knowledge each one of us brings to the table. But if I have data scientists and data analysts on my LMS team, if they don't know what's LMS, they don't understand what it is that's measuring, right? And if I'm not talking to Ramya, who's being asked to give employee experience, we are not going to be able to get the result. So the cross collaboration and trust building that each of us brings the piece of information that can drive the result becomes paramount. So thank you for asking that question.
Maybe the last question, as we are about to hit, the dotted line, Minoo, with your permission, is that, yes, I think in India, I think around 2021 beginning or so, we have seen one very interesting example, which is very rare because of the industry that it comes from. I'm talking about Tata Steel Kalinganagar plant, Minoo, right? This plant has got a world's prominent digital facility award from World Economic Forum. That
wow.
Just that plant alone, now it has become a classic case study in data science and things like that. Now, what these guys have actually done is that, like you rightly said, how to develop this data-driven culture. And, being a steel plant, they got used to, because it's a legacy industry after all, and they got used to different processes, and they got used to it. But suddenly, because of the millennial or the Gen Zs who have come in, they started putting different hats, and they started looking at the same problem, same process with a different lens. And that eventually led to a movement kind of thing, right? So therefore, now so much so that they have put all this process in place, and they have driven this. I mean, they have recruited a lot of people with this background, the data scientists and data engineers, etc. So much so that it has gone all the way up to top management of the company, and eventually they have transformed the entire company from the point of view of decision making. That's one part of it. The question that I want to ask you is that one of the questions that people tend to ask is that uh, should this data science be in-sourced, or should it be outsourced, Minoo? Because one is that people say that at the end of the day, as the companies grow, so therefore this function also should be able to scale up, right? So therefore, it might be easy in case if it is outside the company that is being outsourced. But there are equally amount of people who argue very vehemently, in fact, saying that it should be in-sourced. So therefore, we can have a much better control on this, the insights and the way you go about collecting the data, and also start using the data, Minoo.
I think there is. So thank you for asking question, Nagendra. If I can summarize it, you're essentially asking, can data scientists be pooled somewhere, and can we just send them the data, and can they give us insights, and then we can change our processes, right?
Yeah.
I think it depends, right? Depends on the change and depends on the scope of the data itself also. Certain tools, like for my little team of LMS in Citrix, I won't need to outsource the data science to data scientists. But I did. There's another team which was doing internationalization. They have large amounts of data that they are converting from English to various different languages, and they were employing modern tools of machine learning to see the quality of the content that they were creating. So they already knew some of this data analytics tools. So I said, okay, you know what? I can outsource it from my team to an internal team because they have the knowledge, right? So I think that cross collaboration again becomes important, where within the organization you may have pockets which have strengths to do that analysis for you, but the analysis has to be contextual. The data science sitting offshore will not know, let's for the Tata Steel example, right? I could be a fantastic data scientist, and the Tata Steel safety information comes to me. I cannot tell them how to change the process. I cannot even tell them what is it that's relevant, even in Converse example, right? So the context has to be learned. And that this is why Rameya's challenge, right? She has data scientists who doesn't have HR context. So two silos. So there needs to be communication. And again, offshore teams for the last 25 some years, I worked with offshore teams, largely in India. Communication becomes the key to the success, whether it's written, whether it's verbal, articulating the needs, articulating the wants, the results. Unless we act as a team, the success becomes, bleak. And to drive that success, collaboration is the key.
Thank you so much, and we already overshot the time, but it's absolute pleasure having you, and great insights. I would say very pragmatic and very actionable insights, and I'm sure all the participants will have, like I said, a lot of, quite a few actionable insights, especially those people, either they are part of the, the data-driven teams, or they're planning to set up data-driven teams. But either way, I think it's a phenomenal, learning in the last few minutes. And once again, sorry for bothering you early in the morning, but it's an absolute pleasure having you, and look forward to having you and hosting you for another interesting topic, maybe a similar kind of topic, because I'm sure as this, the space is evolving, continuously evolving with AI, ML. I think the current issue of Time magazine, for the first time, they've come out with Time 100 AI. For the first time, they've come out with AI 100. I think all of them are doing phenomenal work, and very great to see, quite a few out of this 26 people who are featured on the cover page. Quite a few people, almost about 6 to 7 of them are from India. Of course, working in the United States, and some of them from India as well. But I think that is the future of AI, and I'm sure that is going to be part of data sciences as well. And absolute pleasure once again having you. and then having your very insightful thoughts on this topic, Minoo.
Thank you, Nagendra. Thank you, TimesPro, for giving me this opportunity. It was my pleasure. And thank you for the audience for making this conversation interactive. I really loved your insightful questions, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Happy weekend, Minoo.